Over the last year, Book of Hours has been there for you during the most challenging times of our lives. As an artist collaboration, we've given shape and depth to some of the most complicated topics of our time, making them easily accessible for those who seek to understand. We've given voice and space to the stories that often go ignored. Please take a moment to consider being a patron, make a donation, or join Rockfin. Thank you. Well, there we are. Hey, we're professionals. Welcome back to another edition of Pullquote.
Right. And thank you for joining us today. And we are very excited to be bringing you our special guest today, Kevin Jenkins. Would you like to read a little bit about Kevin?
I've got a little bio here.
Okay.
Kevin Jenkins is CEO of Urban Health Alliance. His Wikipedia entry, Global Health Alliance. I'm sorry, Urban Global Health Alliance. My bad. His Wikipedia entry is short and derogatory. It mentions that, quote, Kevin Jenkins has been called one of the disinformation dozen, responsible for 65% of COVID-19 anti-vaccine misinformation and conspiracy theories on the internet and social media, according to a report by the Center for Countering Digital Hate in 2021, end quote. That's so harsh, dude. We caught Kevin this past summer at the Arise USA, the Resurrection Tour in Beaver, Pennsylvania, where he met face-to-face with the Black Lives Matter protesters who showed up. We're going to talk to him more about that. More recently, Kevin spoke with Angela King from the American King Foundation and has been speaking in public all over the place. Kevin is a longtime friend, a big supporter of Big Book of Hours, and has championed our work. Our first interview with Kevin was the inspiration for developing our show, Pullquote. We're bringing him back on the show to catch up on what's been up with him and how he's surviving infamy. Welcome, Kevin Jenkins.
Well, who gave Wikipedia the right to define who I am as a human being?
Right.
Well, you know, Wikipedia is owned by Bill Gates, so nobody should listen to that at all.
Oh,
the mere fact that I can't go in and correct it. My body of work has been international. My body of work has been regional and national. And I can't believe that Wikipedia actually believes that anybody is listening to them. Only lazy people read Wikipedia.
Right.
You know, I mean, lazy people.
I use it to get some basic information.
No, I don't know why. I love that because look at that one little paragraph. You know, I've built half of a city. I've saved hospitals. I've educated people all on the planet. I've been all over this country, 57 cities, 39 states. And before that, I went into 23 states fighting for parents' medical freedoms and their religious freedoms and all the things I think is important to have as a human being. But I just find it interesting that they think that anybody's listening to them at all. You know, I mean, how racist. Wait a minute, ready, guys? You're going to love this. How racist is that?
Ooh.
To try to define me as some lunatic or someone that is not speaking truth to his people. You know, I remember when we did the documentary Medical Racism, Chelsea Clinton said that Bobby Kennedy should be taken off of social media because he's trying to trick Black people about their history. But what she didn't do, because she didn't see the documentary, that it was several Black Americans like myself that co-produced it. So now even she wants to rewrite the narrative of race.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, how despicable is that? You know, that they believe that right now the global tyrants, not global elites, the global tyrants are losing because Black Americans, white Americans, people all around the world are waking up to this tragedy that's before us right now. And they're doing more homework. They're opening up their minds. They're opening up their third eye. They're now looking at how to explore and protect themselves and protect their children. And I'm very excited to see that because I brag about, this is the only thing I brag about. I don't brag about anything. But the mere fact that as a Black American, I've traveled this country. I was in the heartland in the Midwest. talking to normal people about what they think about this country, what they think about this race, think about race, what they think about faith, family, and freedom. And guess what? We're all on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Black Americans and white Americans.
Right.
It's not about race. It's not about classism. It's about power and control. And we got one enemy. We have one enemy. We don't have five. We have one. The global tyrants and their party of idiots, like the black. I'll give you an example. The black entertainment class doesn't exist anymore. They're buffoons for the people that pay them. The black pseudo-intellectuals need to close up and sell back their degrees because it has no value. The black church is not the black traditional church. It's the modern black church that works for the oligarchs and works for the government. We should stop listening to them because they don't represent us at all. The black politician, the so-called black politician and activist, we should wipe that away from our consciousness, because all of them, the ones that have been selling garbage as hope, the ones that's selling us that we should take an experimental biologic that's going to destroy us and disconnect us from God and rewrite our DNA of faith and rewrite our DNA, the perfect body that God gave us. We should run away from those people every day.
Right.
Yeah. So, you can't run fast enough. I mean, get away from all of it.
Well, I find it amazing that, you're saying, people rewriting the, the narrative, and it's like the CCDH that I mentioned before. I was looking at their site, and, it's amazing, like what they're saying, we should do. And like one of the things was take 10 penny down, and, and it's like, wow, it's just for asking questions and making statements that are true, Well,
I think they help us when they do that. I think that every time Joe Biden speaks, and every time the woman that runs the CDC now speaks, and every time the NIH speaks and Fauci speaks, and every time people are trying to define one group as clean and unclean, I think they help us. I actually absorb all of it. When the new governor took out her vax bracelet on her neck and said that, in a black church or a multicultural church, that church should be closed down forever to even allow her to say that God said to poison your body. Right. God said to surrender your body. God said that slavery is okay. I love her, and I hope she keeps talking. Thank God. Because I got to tell you, don't call her crazy. Say, look, the I call it what is it? The vaccine cult of America, the vaccine cult of the world. They are desperate. But here's the frightening part: that a church, a black man, allowed her to come in and speak in his pulpit, not on the side, but in his pulpit, and tell the people in that church that it is all right to subscribe and it's all right to endorse, death over life. Fear over life. Guess what? That place should be closed down.
Right.
The black church, I want to spend a couple of seconds on this because you guys get me started.
I know we talked about this with you in Beaver as well. So go for it.
Yeah.
The black church, the traditional black church was about faith, family, and freedom, about education, about hope, about bringing this country together. The black traditional church who fought against civil rights and was duped to think that civil rights was the only gateway to freedom, when in fact, Martin Luther King, before he died, said we need to come together as the country to fight against poverty.
Exactly. Right? Well, that's what we've been
together.
saying. That's why he was killed.
That's right. Together. Not about the war, but about that.
Yeah.
Because he was speaking to white people and saying, listen, we're all in the same boat. Right? Think about that. We're all in the same boat. So now all of a sudden, you have all of these people out there trying to rewrite history. The fact of the matter is the black body is the most commoditized body in the world. The black body has been the body that has been profited off more than anybody in the world, right? The black body was the instrument that created wealth for all of these families and all of these people now that have joined together to destroy human life. So for black Americans, the black non-traditional church, to go out and tell us it's all right to take an experimental biologic that's going to destroy us, and without even opening up a discussion for debate, is against God. It's against God, and they should be closed down. And anybody that's worshiping in those churches, they better find their God consciousness, they better find their God courage, and they better seek God's face for the right answer. Because it's a tragedy what's happening right now. Majority of the black churches in America right now are government agencies. They don't work to get join us to faith and join us to God. They are now operating at another level to trick and fool people about their personal lives, and they should be closed down. And any black minister, any black imam, any one of them, any white minister, anyone comes on the show, you ever notice they don't want to debate and have this discussion because they are now been purchased and they are now owned by the global tyrants, not the global elite. We have to stop using these words.
Right.
Global tyrants.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing elite about them.
Nothing.
For sure.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's such a powerful statement. I'm just thinking of so many churches that I know of that have, gone the wrong way in this entire process. I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but you know what I'm saying?
Well, don't worry about it. I help you not to choose them carefully.
Well,
this is not the traditional black church. This is not the traditional church. These are corporations that work for the government, and we should walk out of them. They're selling religion. They're selling religion. They're not talking about faith.
Yeah, there are a lot of people of faith that do watch our show. So we like to give them a respectful nod, and we hope that they really embrace your message and really take it to heart. I have met with people face to face in Pittsburgh who have had to, show identification in order to go back to church, in order to go back to worship.
That's right. You were talking to these women at the
right in my aqua therapy class, and they were sort of brokenhearted about it, and having a real they were having to come to terms with their faith and their friendship and their assembly versus their conscience versus what they know to be right. And I tried to talk to them, but again, I didn't want to be I'm just going to put it out there, bluntly, the white woman from San Francisco, which I've already been kind of marginalized in Pittsburgh that way, like the know-it-all. I didn't want to tell them, well, you should do this and you should find another. And I didn't want to be like you because I think it comes better from you. So for those people in that particular demographic who watch our show, I think that they will get a lot out of what you're saying is what I'm trying to say.
Well, true. Listen, I find it very interesting that white Americans now find themselves in a position that they can't speak their own truth. It's very interesting that I hear that a lot when I travel around the country. I was on the tour of Faith, Family, and Freedom for 57 cities, 39 states. I've done a poll of this country. And this whole issue of race has become so insidious. It's only out there to keep us separated.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
Absolutely.
what it is. This is not about race. This is not about classism. It's about power and control. But the mere fact that you can't speak your mind because you're a white woman or you're a white man, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Because when we unified during the civil rights movement, we unified all around the world. White actors, black actors, we all came together to fight for human rights, not just black rights, but human rights. And we have this dream spell with these institutions that we should have buried a decade ago, 2 decades ago. They don't represent anything but themselves. They're not giving you and feeding you the gospel of truth. They're feeding you the gospel of deceit. And the reason why we're not opening up our minds to that is because we've become a lazy species. Critical thinking is like, it doesn't exist anymore. I had a conversation with my 2 grandsons today because I don't get to see them often, but I adore them. And they're black men, they're black human beings. And I'm helping my daughter and the parents to raise them as that, to know that they're loved, to know that they have power. And I asked my youngest grandson, he showed me his report card. So he wanted to be excited about it. And I looked at it. I said, okay, this just tells me you could pass the test. I said, but who are you as a human being? He says, Granddad, what do you mean? I said, do you understand who you are as a human being? That you have blood flowing through your veins, that you are connected to something greater than yourself? Do you understand that, to get A or a B doesn't represent who you are as a human being? Are you able to critically think? He says, well, Granddad, this is my youngest one. well, what does critical thinking mean? I said, well, I'm going to give you a lesson that you've never had before. Go look it up and do some critical thinking. But you know what my kid did? He said, Granddad, the next time you come home, I'm going to have a whole discussion with you about critical thinking.
That's awesome.
Okay.
My 16-year-old grandson.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Went to get a part. This was my 11-year-old that did this.
Okay. All right.
But my 16-year-old grandson was on a job 4 weeks ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. I was talking to Christiane Northup about this in my family, because Christiane and all of you have become my family.
Mm-hmm.
You're my tribe, my new tribe, and I love it and I embrace it. But my 16-year-old had a part-time job, and he calls his mother and says, Mommy, my boss is telling me that I can't work on this job any longer unless I get the experimental biologic. My grandson told him, I will not take the experimental biologic, and I'm not going to work on your job anymore, and give me my last check. And then he called his father and told his father what happened. His father went to the job and dressed this man down and said, my son is 16 years old. I have control of him. Don't you ever speak to my son that way again. So my daughter calls me when I was away and said, Dad, I got something to tell you. Marquise lost his job. I said, oh, why? Because his boss recommended that he had to take the experimental biologic. Now, my grandson is only 16 years old, but he stood up against them. Wow. And he told them, I will not do it. And I'm saying my 16-year-old, my 11-year-old is being trained to understand and critically think and say, listen, if this is something that doesn't support what my family says and what I believe, I'm not going to do it. So everybody that's listening to this, you have no excuse not to stand up for your human rights and stand up for your children's rights and stand up for your family rights.
Right.
You have no excuse. None. And these young kids that are telling their parents, oh, I'm going to take the experimental biologic anyway, without you telling them it's right and wrong, well, we've done a poor job in raising our children.
Right.
And we need to take the blame for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this kind of ties into something I wanted to bring up. And, I've been thinking about and hearing about intersectionality, within the corporate structure these days. I mean, it's getting very strong coming out of corporations and even, advertising and things like that. And
the culture.
And it's very interesting how it is, anti critical thinking. It is tokenism, and it's like the corporate means of basically redefining what I just had the word conformity is, right? Because now
equity and equality.
Well, yeah, but it's just it's a new form of conformity where it's like, okay, we check off all the boxes, and now we can represent ourselves in this manner, and we now have a prescribed way of behaving within the corporate culture, so that we can say and celebrate who we are. But it's always it's within a prescribed method of conforming to, again, staying within the boundaries of
right.
And it's about behavior training and not about thinking at all.
Right. Kudos.
Well, all of this has been a global plan to what is it, the word demasculate, right? A group of people and rip all of the men out of all of our communities that will be prepared to stand up and protect our women and our families. And the corporate giants understand this better than anything. They don't lose anything by selling garbage as hope.
Right.
Right. But as a group, and as all of us as a group, we should be able to understand what this is all about. So it's like the word diversity. I hate that term.
Yeah.
It means nothing.
It means nothing.
And when people say people of color, I get sick to my stomach, because what does that mean? Right? I don't understand that when Black people say, well, women of color. I'm like, what is that? Right? What is it? What does that mean, a woman of color? So if you're Indian or if you're American, what does that mean? What that does is to dilute our national relationship with our culture as Americans, as individuals. No, we're people of color. Those white people, people of color. Well, where does Black people fit in that? Because we're selling the word diversity. We're selling the word people of color. So when people say to me, well, Kevin, I say I'm a Black American male. That's what I am. I'm a Black American male. Now, I am connected to my lineage in Africa, but I'm a Black American male. And understand what that means. That as a descendant of slaves, my people came into this country in the bottom of a ship across the Atlantic, and we helped to build this country. We were the bodies that commoditized this country, and we fought in every war. So I claim this country. This is my country because I fought for it to be the way it is today. Not the way it is becoming, but the freedom that we had, the ability to not be censored, the freedom to be independent. My ancestors fought to make sure this country, so that flag is my flag. So when I see these young Black Americans, these new wave Black Americans running around here talking about we anti-American, we anti the flag. Well, you're anti-Frederick Douglass. You anti-Ida B. Wells. Even though in their struggles, they still tried to unify this country so we can break the bonds of racism and bigotry in this country. And guess what? Their kids and their families fought to try to save this country and lead it into a light that would give us the ability to be human beings and live the way we were created to live. So diversity and multiculturalism and all of this stuff, throw it in the garbage. Those are all languages to confuse us from our ability to connect, to build a better society and a better country and a better world for ourselves. So we are all to blame. We're all to blame because we embraced all of that.
Right. Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We're
so we got to run away from
it.
We got to break the backs of that. You know.
Yes.
So I think I talked to you about this before, and this is going to be a very sensitive conversation. So you got to follow me a little bit.
Okay.
You know, a young lady calls me up today, and she says to me, a young lady calls me and says, "Kevin, I want to ask you a question." I said, "Well, you know, every time my wife says she wants to ask me a question, I'm in trouble." So I don't understand. So we started laughing and we were joking. I said, "Well, just tell me what you want to talk about." She said, and now I want people to clearly understand this. She said to me, "Kevin, do you believe what they're doing in Texas about abortions is wrong?" I said, "Well, no, I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "First of all, let's like really deal with the issue of the word abortion. Why was it ever created? It was a part of the eugenics program, Margaret Sanger and these globalists of their time that said that the Black body has no value. And we have to convince Black Americans through the church and their faith leader, all of these people, we need to convince Du Bois and Bethune and the Black church that it is good for them to abort their children. And that's what they bought into. So abortion in itself represents the corporation of white supremacy, because these congressmen and all of these political leaders that are saying what they're doing in Texas is racist and represents the corporation of white supremacy, they're lying. They don't know anything about the history of abortion. Planned Parenthood was not created to help family planning. It was created to destroy the Black body and destroy our ability to be able to protect our generation to generation to generation. That's the truth. That's it. So it's not about the woman's right to choose, because I support that. I live with a powerful woman. I have powerful daughters. I have a powerful mother. I come from a culture that women and men have always worked together to raise the family. And what has happened is we've brought this European theology that is not something we should embrace, the unifying of the man and the family. They have created public policies. The radical left, the Democratic Party, has created public policies for the last several decades, right, to destroy the Black family. Right. Now they're passing all of these mandatory laws to destroy the Black family. Yeah. Now they're saying that you can't work because they think that Black Americans, first of all, Black Americans, 60 to 70% of Black Americans work for the government. So that means we're a slave to the government and we have to do what they tell us to do because we own nothing, right? We own nothing. So this is a new way for us to rewrite, you know, the new paragraph for ourselves, the new history for ourselves. We need to now capture ownership. We need to now divest from the public schools. We need to now divest from this economic system that never wanted us anyway. We're only the prophets for their power. And, well, and Black Americans need to understand that.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, going back to, you know, like you were talking about the abortion issue and you know, going back to the beginnings of all that, like let's go back to the 70s when there were a lot of things, a lot of agendas that were being pushed by white liberal professional class women in the case of abortion, ignoring, of course, you know, the very thing that you were just talking about. And, you know, there were a lot of radical leftist black women who were calling that out for what it was, because they're like, hey, they were saying exactly what you're saying right now. But also, you were, you look back on like issues like busing and school busing and things like that, where they're taking, children out of their neighborhoods and placing them in exotic places and vice versa. And it was in the name of, like you said, diversity. But it really, I think it destroyed neighborhoods and culture and made things almost worse in terms of segregation.
Wow. You know
What
what?
do you
Though?
think?
We're going to have we got a quick hour, but we're going to have a good conversation.
I mean, what do you think of that idea?
Well, what do you mean? What did I think about
Well,
it? Did it
I mean, do you think that is the result? Do you think that was the result of busing, or do you think there was a positive outcome from that?
There was never a positive outcome.
Okay, all right.
Guess what? Our schools are more segregated than ever now.
Well, that's what I thought.
Right. And so Brown versus Board of Education was like a joke when you really analyze it, because it has one thing in it, that one line, it says, with all deliberate speed. That means it could take me a century to get there as a state.
Right.
And when Black Americans, now that I'm older and I can analyze information, even though I was trained to analyze and do critical thinking, I look at it even different. Like when you say the 13th Amendment, oh, it sounds great, only until you're locked up.
Right.
Well, did you see our video?
We did a video about it.
We got to talk about it.
It's called 13 Amended.
Yeah.
I got to talk about it. So think about this for a second. All of those laws that were passed in the 1960s, within the next quarter, I think the next century, they were all wiped away. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I was watching something about Ida B. Wells last night. She's one of my heroes. I love that woman. And she had this paper called The Free Speech. And she was going around the country fighting and educating and getting information about all the lynching that was happening in the country. And this woman was so brilliant and powerful and so, engaged, that she went around the country getting reports about all of these people that were being lynched, because she had a friend that was lynched, and she had this newspaper called Free Speech. And This woman went around the country, documenting this, getting Black Americans engaged. She had become and the reason why they were lynching Black Americans, not because they were criminals, they were lynching us because we owned everything. We owned our own banks. We owned our own churches. We owned our own community. We owned everything. They didn't lynch us because we were evil people. They wanted what they couldn't have anymore because of Reconstruction, what came out of the 1800s before the compromise of I think it's 1877. I can't remember everything. But Black Americans were being murdered because of that. Right. Because you have to remember, when we left the plantation, we had no place to go. Right? We were vagrants. That's why they created the vagrant laws. That's why they created all.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Here's something that people don't understand. The one thing that Black Americans wanted most than ever on earth, and I get emotional when I talk about it, they were free, and they were on the roads. Guess why they were on the roads? They were trying to find their loved ones. But the second thing they were most concerned about was becoming literate. Mm-hmm. Look at these new Black Americans now. We're not focused on being literate. We want a degree from Harvard that now has no value. We have now been indoctrinated to actually sell garbage and soap to our own people. We actually believe we're more intelligent than Frederick, than Paul Robeson, than Muhammad Ali, than Ida B. Wells, than Fannie Lou Hamer. They actually believe they know more than what those people knew. And those people were telling us that we have to bound ourselves to our own story. Right? To our own story, to our own narrative. And all of these new wave Black people, they're disgusting. The Black political class in this country, they don't work for us, they work for them. Mm-hmm. The Black pseudo-intellectual class, they don't work for us, they work for them. The Black entertainment, they're the best coons on earth. I mean, Rachel Maddow, not Rachel Maddow, but what's that woman that with all those braids on?
I hate her.
She's the greatest mammy. She's the greatest mammy in the 21st century.
she was on Star Trek and she's a comedian.
No,
and-
no,
Oh,
no,
Whoopi-
no, no. You're
Whoopi
talking
Goldberg.
not Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm talking about the other girl on MSNBC. I'm gonna think of her name in a minute.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
okay. I thought you were talking to the talk show host
No, no,
now.
no, no,
Okay.
No.
So
But I
Yeah.
gotta think of it. She disturbs me so much I can't even remember her name. But think
Right.
about this though.
we don't
They
know.
are all now manufactured blacks. They're not
Right.
Black Americans. They're not rooted in the history of Black Americans. Even Barack Obama wasn't. Barack
Right.
Obama was chosen by the global tyrants to be able to massage us back to sleep while they pursue their great agenda of wiping all of Americans out.
Mhm.
And he's
Some
got
people
the-
argue this is his third term.
well, can I be honest with you? It's another failure. It's a failed term again.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's a failed term. So for me, when I look at this lane, when I hear these people talking, it just boggles the mind. I'm like, who are these new wave Black people? Like,
Right,
who are they?
right.
You know,
So
and,
you,
and I think that we have to tell what my grandmother would say, guys. We have to shame the devil and tell the truth. And I told a group of people yesterday, I don't know if you noticed, but I've been on this tour, my third tour. I don't know what this is. My third tour. And right now, between the King Foundation, American King Foundation, Urban Global Health Alliance, we are now going across the country in Black communities talking about medical apartheid, talking
Good.
about medical racism.
let's bring up where you were yesterday in Brooklyn in this wonderful building that we saw a video of you
Well,
speaking.
let me show the photo first.
There's
of,
the
like,
photo. Now, and then we would like to show just a few seconds of your introductory speech to
Yeah.
these people.
Okay, so let me bring that up.
And then we'll bring the photo back and you can talk.
All right. A lot of people in this audience probably have lost their jobs, and a lot of you are going to lose your jobs, and you now understand the seriousness of the coercion that's been going on because they want to break you. So what we have to do as a community, like we used to do in my neighborhood, we come together and we fed each other, we educated each other, we took care of each other's kids, and that's what we've forgotten. We've forgotten about community. We're all about individualism, and this is going to force us to look at ourselves differently. You have no choice but to fight back. See, I believe in life. So my life, I'm going to protect my life, and I'm going to protect my children, I'm going to protect my community, and I'm going to protect all of the people that I believe in, and I believe in all of you, and I believe in your children. So now, we don't have to go home and put our action plan together to stop them, but to help each other and continue to work with each other. We have to stop being so selfish. Like today, one thing about Black Americans, we are very emotional first, and then we get to thinking later. And I'm telling you right now, there's no more time for that. We have to change our thinking. This is about immediate action. When somebody calls you anti-something, say I'm anti-anything that would take my rights away from you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good place to leave
Really powerful opening statement there. We're going to share the photo and continue to talk to you about, we want to share the photo, about what sort of response you got from the Brooklyn community, where you're going to be next. And also I want to touch on your interaction with Black Lives Matter recently.
Well, let me tell you something. Last year, we embarked on this journey at Urban Global Health Alliance to go retail. We wanted to go into neighborhoods, and we wanted to start to break down this COVID narrative, this COVID lie, and break it down so people can start to understand what it's about. It was never about your health. It was about control. And last year, people, they didn't really get it. And now they're starting to see it in full bloom, what the banking industry is getting ready to do. This whole vaccinated as opposed to unvaccinated. And I want to get back to that as we close up, because it's very important that people understand historically. And what we started doing before I even went on the Robert Davis Steele tour, Faith, Family, and Freedom, we had traveled all around the country talking about the new apartheid, the medical apartheid, this whole program that was going to separate us based on being clean and unclean. And we started building that. So several months ago, I got a call from Angela Stanton King, because we had worked together before in Georgia when we brought the frontline doctors through Urban Global Health in a partnership with American King Foundation to talk about what medical racism looks like. And we brought all of the frontline doctors there, and it was a powerful event, I hate to use the word, I got to get that out of my verbiage. But we brought people from all communities, white and black and Asian and, Americans, I should say. And we all came together to talk about what is COVID, how it's impacting our communities. We really broke the lies down so people could be empowered to make the right decisions about their health and also make the right decisions about how they want to live their lives. So that was last year. So this year we joined and did a partnership that we knew was timely because the Black community still wasn't getting all the information the right way, because you had a lot of Black people that look like me that are being paid by Big Pharma, right? You have a lot of Black elected officials that have been writing policies to take our medical freedoms away from us and our religious exemptions away from us. A lot of Black elected officials now that are pushing slavery, pushing the slave passport, talking about segregation and trying to rewrite. I want you to understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to rewrite the language of racism. Right. How do you do that? These are evil people. I'm talking about my people that are pushing that. I'm not even talking about anybody else. I'm not blaming another group for what we're accepting. So it was our job to go into these communities. We just did one in Georgia. 500 Black Americans came to Georgia to listen to the truth. And then they went back out into their communities and they spread the good news. And they're now planning in their communities to do different things to fight against their tyranny or this tyranny of our time. They're taking their kids out of these public schools. They're now looking at how do we educate their children that's going to college. They're now saying, how do we plant and grow our own food? How do we create our own banking system? How do we create ability to travel? That's why we created Freedom Travel Alliance. Do you guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's when I went through the heartland, I met with all of these ranchers. And this whole narrative about a food shortage is bull.
Oh, yeah, we know.
Food shortage. But these ranchers were saying, hey, Kevin, this is what they're trying to do to us in the Midwest and the heartland. They're trying to take our properties away from us. They're trying to tell us, don't serve you good food, serve them bad food, actually murder your own people. See, I got an opportunity to talk to these people. And that's when I started understanding that when we unify, we win. So now when you look at what happened in Brooklyn yesterday, that was all of New York coming together. I have spoken in New York, I think 5 times. And from the first time to yesterday, it's just an explosion.
It keeps growing.
Consciously, they're waking up all around the country. Consciously, they're waking up in New York. But the thing that I loved the most about yesterday was there was so many young people in the audience.
That's good.
That made me
really good.
That filled me up. I was like, wow, young people. And I watched them in the audience and they was zeroed in.
Nice.
They're now going to go back and talk to their peers. They're now going to go and talk about they're trying to destroy the future of our country, the future of our communities, and the future of Black Americans. This is an all organized effort to destroy the Black body, to confuse the Black body, to monetize the Black body. And now white America understands without a shadow of a doubt. I believe it's happening every day. This is not about race. This is not about classism. It's about power and control. So Brooklyn further inspired me that we're winning. It's more of us than them. They might have Big Pharma News. They might have the tech titans censoring us. The more they censor me, the more they censor us, the more we win. The more we win, because people are starting to see how insidious this is, how horrible this is. The mere fact that 60 years ago, I couldn't walk into a restaurant because I was unclean. 60 years ago, I couldn't get on a bus because I was unclean. I couldn't travel because I was unclean. That's why we created the Green Book. 60 years ago, I couldn't swim in the swimming pool with you because I was unclean. 60 years ago, I couldn't go to some of your schools that you went to because I was unclean. They deemed us medically unclean. Something was wrong with our brains. Something was wrong with being Black. And to have Black Americans supporting this based on flawed data, flawed science, they are modern day slave catchers.
Right.
And we should stop listening to them. They're evil people. They are proxies for the global tyrants.
You've used that term with us before, the modern day slave catchers. I think maybe the first time we met, and certainly when we were in Pennsylvania, in Beaver, Pennsylvania, when we talked, that was a phrase or a term that you kept using, and I really appreciate you bringing that up because it really does feel like that, doesn't it?
Well, it's very interesting when I say that. I see we have to codify language that shows you who these people are. So when somebody called me anti-vax the other day, I bust out laughing. I said, that's the equivalent of calling me the N-word.
Right.
They was like, Kevin, oh, no, it is, because you have to understand, there were a group of parents for the last 20 years that said something is wrong with my child after taking your product. Now, these parents actually believed in the system of medicine, right? That what betrayed them. And then when they stood up and said something was wrong, they say, oh, they're anti this. And for any American to use that to describe any of us, it is the most derogatory term. That's like calling us a kite. That's like calling us all of the words that they use, the N-word, all of those words. And we should be offended by it, and we should explain to people, guess what? That's the equivalent of calling me a racist term, because we all have them in our groups. And
well, I think,
modern day slavery, I just want to stay right there for a second.
Okay.
Modern
all right.
Catchers. Now, you have to understand, as a Black American, being rooted in my history and rooted in my Blackness, it had to take a Black tribe, which we call Black nations, that were at war with another nation, Black nation in Africa. We were not tribes. That's a European term. But for them to be able to get into the interior of Africa, they had to work with other African nations. So those African nations in Nigeria, those African people in Ghana, those African people in Kenya, those African people all over Africa were enslaved, or Black Africans participated in slavery to enslave their people and turn them over to the European. That's fact. So the modern day slave catcher that we see now, that sounds good, that smells good, that thinks so, they are all the same. They are complicit in what? Putting their people back into slavery again. Universal slavery, global slavery that affects white and Black people. It's not about Black people anymore. It's global slavery. So when I say modern day slave catcher, I know exactly when I say it, they know what I mean. When I say war criminals, when you have all of these medical doctors, all of these medical journals, all of these health professionals that are lying to us and selling us garbage and so, knowing that COVID is the equivalent of a flu, saying that ivermectin, is not a good drug, hydrochloroquine is not a good drug, vitamin C is not a good remedy, vitamin D is not a good remedy, walking every day and choosing your diet and leaving a clean, that is absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
And all of these new wave people that say, oh, just get vaccinated. Well, God bless you. I wish you the best of luck, because you don't even know what's in it. I asked a person the other day, I said, can I ask you a question? They said, what, Kevin? Do you know what's in it? Humada, 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 humada. I said, oh, by the way, let me ask you another question. Do you know what it's doing to your body? Humada, 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 humada. And then I asked him the greatest question of all time. You ready? You know it doesn't stop transmission.
Right.
So once you start there, there's no more discussion.
Right.
So this whole notion between vaccinated and unvaccinated and showing your slave passport is the most evil thing I've seen in all my life.
We agree.
Global slavery is at our door, and we all have to fight against it. But here is another thing I want to say. Any American that takes out the slave passport and goes and shows their slave passport to say that they're better than another group because they're unhealthy and they bought into this narrative and buying into global slavery, they're modern day slave catchers. I don't care if you're white or Black.
Right.
Any American that takes out a fake vaccine slave passport to go into a restaurant to spend your money to be a part of the modern day slave catcher class, right? We should run away from them every day. We should not. Those people are modern day slave catchers, and now they're trying to cloak themselves as somebody that is a part. Oh, we're a part of you. I'm clean. No, you're not. You're unclean consciously. You're not connected to anything greater than yourself. You're evil too. So now we have to grow our own food. We have to build our own schools. We have to create our own banking currency. That's what we have. Look, God has allowed us to see this in full bloom. And now is our greatest time to rewrite history or to create a narrative on how to save humanity.
Right. Yeah. Create new history.
Right? Yeah. Well, Julie just said to me, it's a lot of work. And I said, yes, it is. And we try to live by example here, but it's not enough. We have a garden in back, and we try to use it as sort of a showcase. The people around here are very poor and not very well educated. And they all say to me, my grandparents, they had a garden like this and it was great and blah, blah, blah. And then, aren't you worried about people taking the food from your garden? I'm like, no, because none of you know what to do with it. I don't say that to them, but that's basically what the deal is. They are afraid to take anything from the garden, not just because it's on my property. We don't have a fence in the back and it leads to the alley. People walk through our backyard all the time. Well, except now when everything's all overgrown with, vegetable, but before that, when I have things growing out there, they don't take it because they don't know what to do with it. And so we do have a big job ahead of us. And, I've been in discussions with some of our fellow anarchists on a private chat on Twitter. And, we're talking about, these alternatives, like you were saying, like, well, what do we do in terms of, trade and economies and things like that. And, you can go back to Joseph Proudhon, who came up with the idea of mutualism, which is a very equitable, and I don't mean that in the modern sense, but equitable means of exchanging money and work, and it's basically keeping profit out of an exchange of goods and services. He came up with the idea of the credit union and keeping bankers out of out of exchanging money and things like that. And this is in the 1840s. So we do, and you've been talking about history as well, and so we do have platforms that we can rely on and go back to as a means of working out and getting rid of the corporations and the people that are trying to rule our lives.
Right. You're absolutely right. Think about it. Credit unions 15, 20 years ago was blowing up. People understood it, their personal relationship with the bank, a small bank, you put your money in, and a lot of churches were, developing credit unions. You know what happened? During Bill Clinton's era, they got rid of all of them. They got rid of all of them. You might have one or two left.
Yeah, we have an account with two of them.
Well, he means the credit unions through the churches, right?
Right. Well, no, I mean, think about it. No, credit unions were all over this country. Yeah. Now, every state, you might have one or two.
Right.
Right.
You might have one or two. They got rid of them because they didn't want us. They didn't want us to build community and understand real banking in a community level. They got rid, just like all of the nonprofits in this country. Right. Now they have 5 nonprofits around the world, around the country now that they're just giving money to, and that's to manage poverty. Right. That's it. All of the local nonprofits that were doing the work, that were healing people, that were addressing, the poverty in those communities and education in those communities and unifying those communities to think greater than their present environment. They got rid of all of them. Right. They got rid of them. And then they hired all of these intermediaries to go in and say, oh, by the way, you don't have capacity to do what you want to do. And they got rid of them. Look, I was one of the first supporters of charter schools in this country. I'm not a supporter of charter schools.
No, I imagine not. Yeah.
See, I believe in competition. There's a duality to me. Right. I believe in competition. I believe in market forces and being able to manipulate. I understand that. But the charter school, because you know why I wanted charter schools? Because I thought independent charter schools would drive the marketplace in Black communities. And guess what? The CMOs, the charter management organizations, got rid of all of them. I think that all of these charter management organizations should be closed down. I think we should divest from them. We should divest from the public schools, and we should create these local private schools that will be able to teach our kids critical thinking, teach our kids the value of family, teach our kids the value of nation building, teach our kids to write science, teach our kids to critically think. I'm not supportive of any of it. They need to be closed down immediately.
Yeah,
we agree.
The money needs to follow the child, right? Not in the way they did it, not the way they did it, the way what we want it to be done. Here's the other thing I want to talk to you about. And I've been measuring this in my brain because I'm still a little confused about it a little bit. I'm being cynical here. We are the government. We finance the government. We vote them in. Why are we listening to these people? It's our government. It's our money. They have spent trillions of dollars, transferred trillions of dollars to the richest people on this planet of our money to kill us. Moderna is getting rich off our money. Pfizer is getting rich off of our money. Johnson & Johnson is getting rich off of our money. And they're all indemnified from the horror that we are going through right now. The death of our children, the death of elderly, the death of our women, the death of, they are getting paid to kill us with our money. Now, remember when you was growing up in school, I don't know if you remember this, taxation without representation, right?
Sure.
Well,
yeah.
That's what's happening right now at a global level. So why are we paying taxes to a system, right, that's selling us death? That should be the movement. That should be our movement. We will not pay you taxes ever again. And we will move to the part of the country that represents our values, represents our moral values, represents our human value. Why are we still acting like slaves? We're not paying into your system. We're taking our kids out of your schools. We're not going into your stores. We're going to create our own, because you know why? We became culture corrupt.
Right.
We are deeply corrupt ourselves. We are morally corrupt ourselves. We're looking for something in the sky to come and rescue us when we already have the power.
Thank you.
That's why I embrace the term empowerment. What is that? I'm going to empower you. You have the power already.
Right. You do already. Yeah. Well, you know, we have the.
So we have to reorganize our thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We have to get back to like being conscious again.
We say here, you know, no heroes, but we do believe in leaders, right? There's leaders, but not heroes. Heroes are people that you depend on to take care of things for you.
And the leaders will help you, will guide you into your own empowerment.
And we can all be leaders,
you know?
right? We can all take turns doing those things.
We are all engaged in hero worshiping.
Right.
See, Malcolm and Martin and all of the great men of my time and women of my time, they became our heroes because of their sacrifice.
I get that.
No. I'm actually agreeing with you.
Oh, okay. All right.
I want to define this hero thing. They became my heroes because of their sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
I worship Jesus Christ, my faith, not my religion, because of the sacrifice. I celebrate Buddhism, you know, not because of because of his sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
See, I believe anybody that sacrificed their lives for us should be honored. Right? Mm-hmm. Muhammad Ali, 22 years old, fought against the government. Malcolm X, 31 years old, sees his 22-year-old and nurtures his 22-year-old to find his blackness and find his manhood. Martin Luther King, understand the complexities of life at that time, balancing his faith and balancing his social justice narrative and understanding how to interconnect that with what was happening with Mahatma Gandhi. But I don't celebrate Mahatma Gandhi as a hero because he was locking up black people every day and he was an Indian nationalist.
Right.
But you got to understand the history. I don't celebrate Du Bois. I understand what he was saying, but Du Bois brought this duplicitous relationship and started selling what Sanger was selling about aborting our children. You got to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
You got to open up your mind, your fourth eye, not your third eye anymore. So like the Book of Hours is opening up our fourth eye, not our third eye, because there's another dimension out there that we have to connect our consciousness to.
It's from the heart chakra.
Yeah,
absolutely. So at the end of the day, it's like when you ask that question about Black Lives Matter. And I always challenged that because I didn't understand what it really represented. Like the NAACP, I still don't know what they represent. I don't understand who these people are. But Black Lives Matter, when I was in Beaver, Pennsylvania, and I'll tell you two stories that happened to me.
Okay.
I'm in Beaver, Pennsylvania. You were there. It was about 1,000 people out there. This beautiful, lovely God. It was just
gorgeous
beautiful.
Day. Yeah.
And we came in because that was a part of our tour to do this tour in Beaver, Pennsylvania about faith, family, and friends. I mean, faith, family, and faith, family, and what is it? Faith, family, and whatever.
Yeah, it was the Resurrection Tour.
Right, Resurrection Tour. I get tongue-tied with all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we were there to talk to Americans. We were there to talk about how do we find our core values? How do we link together? How do we break the barrier of racism? And how do we come together to fight against this tyranny of our time? And Black Lives Matter, some young people who are not conscious, who are being paid in a proxy for the global tyrants. That's why they ripped up America under the guise of racism and, white America being racist. And I dealt with that all over the country. But they were starting to line up because they thought that they were going to do what they normally do, but they didn't realize that there was a Black man there named Kevin Jenkins that was speaking on the stage, that's grounded in his Blackness, understands American and Black history, understands who he is a person, and understand that Black Lives Matter does not represent the Black group whatsoever. It doesn't represent America whatsoever. So I saw them over there. And my dear friend Trent Luce, 7th-generation rancher, who guided us through America, showed us all of the great Americans that are ready to stand up and fight against this tyranny, who has become a dear friend of mine, pointed out Black Lives Matter. And now he's like, Kevin, Black Lives Matter is over there, and I think they're getting ready to do something to disrupt this beautiful day, talking about faith, family, and freedom. I said, really? I said, okay, I'll be right back. So I walked over there, and I said to them, I raised my hands like this. I said, my name is Kevin Jenkins. I'm here in peace, and I want to know, why are you here? Well, I have the right to be here. I said, no, as an American, you do have the right to be here and stand here. But you do not have the right to disrupt these people, and you don't have the right to disrupt our program about faith, family, and freedom. Are you opposed to us having a conversation about faith, family, and freedom? Well, all of these white people. I said, well, wait a minute. You're white. So I don't understand your point. And then there's one brother who was Black. Well, we don't have to talk to you. I said, wait a minute. You don't have to talk to me. You have the right to do that. But now let me tell you the right I have. If you disturb these beautiful, loving people that brought their kids out here to talk about faith, family, and freedom, because I'm that guy that's going to be speaking on that stage. I'm the Black guy. So you're not here representing me. Right? I'm going to get on that stage and I'm going to give you a lesson that you have never seen before. So they started mumbling and grumbling. I said, hey, look, you can do what you want to do, but I'm telling you what I'm prepared to do. 1 hour, they were gone.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, they didn't hang around to listen to you then?
They were gone. Well, they couldn't listen to the truth. It's too powerful. Because I would have gotten into the discussion. When you say Black Lives Matter, that's like asking for an excuse to what? Exist.
Right.
See, I believe Black lives have value.
Right.
Martin taught me Black lives have value. Right?
Wow.
Malcolm taught me Black lives have value. Ali taught me Black lives have value. Paul Robeson taught me Black lives have value. Frederick Douglass taught me Black lives have value. Right?
Right. Wow. That's really powerful. Black Lives Matter.
Have value. See, when you say value,
exist. Yeah.
See, when you say value, that changes everything.
Right. It does.
Think about it. So now I move on to Bangor, Maine. Only on the East Coast I ran into this, but I loved it. I embraced it.
That's Norfolk.
I get out the car.
Yeah.
Bangor, Maine. We're all there talking about faith, family, and freedom. I met the late Robert David Steele, who became a friend. He's passed on, but I'll tell you about that later. He was there meeting me in Bangor because we wanted to make sure we fulfilled our obligation to America to talk about faith, family, and freedom and bring America together in one force to fight against the tyranny of our time. And there were a bunch of white Americans from Maine, you know, the radical left, the righteous ones, the ones that know more about anything and everything. And they don't know nothing about nothing. They're all cultists. And they all want to use blackness as a part of their discussion to hide their evil deeds of stripping us of all of our ability to be free in this world. They're the ones driving this, the radical left. There's no such thing as the Democratic Party anymore. They've all been hijacked. We should get rid of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. They're not standing for life anymore. They're standing for the people that pay their salaries, because we really don't pay them anymore. They are now partners with the global tyrants to kill us. Anyway, there was about 100 people out there. And so Christiane Northrup, you know, one of the most dynamic leaders of our time that has sacrificed her career to tell America the truth, who's now been demonized, one of the most powerful women that brought women together to talk about what it means to be a woman, what it means to protect your health, all of the great things this woman has done. And she's one of my heroes because she has sacrificed.
Mm-hmm.
I see all of these people out there. She says, Kevin, look at all of those people across the street. Now, there's about 1,000 people in the building. So I walk across the street. I raise my hand like this. I said, hi, my name is Kevin Jenkins. I'm coming to you in peace. That's my line. And I asked every one of them, why are you here? Well, we don't like those people in the building. I said, what people in the building? The people that are coming to listen to Faith, Family, and Freedom and discuss about Faith, Family, and Freedom? Well, we don't like those people in the building. I said, what people are you talking about? So there's always the insurgent groups that get in the mix of these people, and they were banging the pots. And this little Russian, I call him a little Russian, he walks out to me. He said, well, we don't have to listen to you. I looked at all of those people. I said, now let me ask y'all a question. Are you guys really with him? Are you guys really with him? I said, young man, that pot you're banging on, do you know those pots that were banged on in Europe were banged on to fight against the tyranny? It was talking about freedom. You're not here to talk about freedom, but let me tell you what happened. There was this one woman that was watching the whole thing. And she said, wait a minute, I didn't sign on for this. I'm going to go and listen what you have to say. She walked in that building and she stood there through the whole thing. And she came up to me and she hugged me. She says, thank you for doing what you're doing. I never grew up. I never saw people as white and black. I grew up in a community where we all live together.
Right.
See, that's the power of God right there.
Right.
That's the power of God. You know what happened to those people? They disappeared. But let me tell you why they disappeared. Because they were standing on a lie.
Right.
And they couldn't stand up against the truth. Yesterday when I was in Brooklyn, the young man walks up to me. He says, Mr. Jenkins, can I talk to you in private? I said, of course. He said, I want to tell you, you gave a speech in New York in Foley Square, or one of those places you spoke in New York, and you talked about people using the fake slave passport and people using the slave passport. And I said, both of them were equally in their crimes against humanity. They're working to kill. He said, you know what I did, Mr. Jenkins, after you gave that speech? Because I had one of those fake slave passports. I ripped it up and I felt ashamed.
Wow.
And I hugged him. I said, don't feel ashamed. Feel the power in you to make the big difference.
Right.
When I was in Georgia, a young woman walks up to me and she's bawling and she's crying and she's like, and I mean, it was a very emotional moment. And she hugged me and she said, I don't know what to do. I'm so afraid. I said, don't be afraid. Just inhale God and exhale fear and find your God courage. Right. Every time you feel fearful, inhale God and exhale fear and find your God courage. Because when you find your God courage, you connect to something greater than yourself. And when you connect to something greater than yourself, you could do things that nobody would ever think you can do. And I said, so anytime you feel fear, just take a deep breath, inhale God and exhale fear. And go and tell another person, when you do that, hold another person's hand like you hold in my hand and tell them that you love them. Because once you show love, love wins over evil all the time. And that doesn't mean to be weak.
Right.
That doesn't mean to be strong.
Right.
But love is the most powerful tool that we can utilize to fight against these evil tyrants. That's why they locked us down. That's why they sold us on 6 inches. That's why they sold us on fear. And when you see somebody living in fear, right, let them live in fear. That's not your job. Your job is to talk to the awakened ones, the ones that God chose for this moment. Like you, both of you are chosen for this moment because God changed our frequency so we can be connected to his voice, so we can hear the truth and seek the right answers. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the minority, I hate to use that word, but the small group of us are going to change the world.
Right.
Not the majority. The small group of us. There was never a massive amount of people that changed anything. It was always the small group.
It's always been small groups of people who have made change, who've created the ability to make a change in the world.
Yeah.
It's the small group of people who create that space that then expands out. Right. Because it allows people to then say, yeah, I do actually feel that way. And I feel that more people are not getting the biologic then they say. I think that the media is lying to us in that respect. They keep telling us that more people are getting it, and I believe it's the opposite.
The opposite. Yeah.
So they give you a percentage, and I think it's the opposite of what.
Well, you are absolutely right. The federal government is in the business of they've been lying to us for decades. We have to abandon the government. Look, we should be ashamed of ourselves of what we've allowed them to do to us. We should be ashamed, not them. We should be ashamed of ourselves. I mean, and all these people around trying to convince you to turn your bodies back over to the same group that have enslaved all of us for centuries. They should be ashamed of themselves. This whole notion that, you know, if I don't subscribe to your narrative of evil, that something is wrong with me. They should be ashamed of themselves. This whole notion that, you know, you're much smarter than me because you allowed somebody to inject you with experimental biologic that you can't even say what's in it. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're ungodly. You're against God. You're now in the legion of evil. And guess what? I'm prepared to say that. I'm prepared to say that. So you don't get a buy. All of you that are listening to this, tell them that comes to you and tries to convince you to embrace evil, say you're against God. And guess what? Let's move on from them. We're not in the convincing business. We're about connecting ourselves to the righteousness of truth.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it. Stop trying to convince everybody. That's not our job.
Right. Yeah, we learned really early on in this thing, you know, when the national emergency was declared on March 13th of 2020. I mean, the first thing I said was, you're going to lose a lot of your family. You're going to lose a lot of your friends, and even people who over time end up aligning with you. You might end up losing them too. It's not your job to take care of the world. It's not your job to go out there and, you know, set the world on fire and bring all this awareness. That is, what is it? Sisyphus?
That's Sisyphus.
You know, that is a lot of wasted energy. So JP and I work on ourselves. You know, we work on our platform. We work on what little we can do with what little we do have to reach our community who is willing to be reached. There are some people in our community that just don't want to deal with it. They can't wait to get their 7-year-old vaccinated. Or
here's the deal. This is what we have to be mindful of. And I've been watching this, guys. The people that are taking experimental biologic, half of them are not telling you what's happening to them right now. We know.
Yeah.
But they're so shamed that their number one job now is to shame us because we understood and they didn't. Instead of calling us up and saying, you were right, and how do we correct it?
Well, Julie,
so those are the ones that we have to be careful of. Mm-hmm. The shamed ones. Mm-hmm. The ones that are going around saying, did you take your vaccine? My wife said something today over breakfast. I couldn't believe it. She said, I don't know if I'm going to say it right because I'm not a woman, and only a woman, a powerful woman like my wife. She said, well, you didn't ask me, did I take my pap smear? You didn't ask me, did I have a breast cancer? You didn't ask me, did I have AIDS? You didn't ask me. She said, you sound like a fool. And then when the woman walked up to her, you know what she did? She put her hands up. Stay away from me because I don't know what you had.
Right. Wow. Well, you know,
she told everybody around her, all of you should be ashamed of yourselves by even embracing that narrative. And guess what? And these are her friends. And all of you are slaves. Because my wife can do that. She's special. She can do that.
I need some of that courage.
And she said to them, when did we ever believe it was all right to separate ourselves based on what they said?
Right.
Fauci is a war criminal.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All of the organizations that we used to look for to give us the right information, OSHA, the FDA, all of them are captured. The CDC is one of the greatest vaccine corporations in America.
Right.
The global tyrants, not global elite, have been working this planet. The only way they can win is if we don't do the work to protect our future. Right? Think about that. If we don't do the work to protect our future. Now, we all tell you how much we love our children. I love this. Oh, we love our children. No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you do not. Because look what you're leaving them. You're running them into a burning building. You're running them into perpetual slavery. You don't love your children. And when these people say to me, oh, well, you know, they are making me my kids wear the mask. You are.
Right.
You are full
Right.
of disease because you're not doing the work to do what? To correct your health. You're responsible for that.
Right.
Personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Don't tell me about the white man. Don't tell me about racism. Guess what? You're engaging in what? A racist attitude. You're using the same racist language against yourselves.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
you don't get about. See, I'm not here to make you feel cuddly. I'm here to tell you the truth. I'm here to tell you the truth. So think about this right now. The next 6 months, it's going to be the hardest 6 months we've ever seen in our lives.
Yeah.
But I do believe this.
That's
I
the
believe
second person
this
who said that.
the next 6 months.
Bring that up.
It's going to be it's going to be all out war.
Okay.
And some of it's not going to be pretty.
You are not the first person to say this about 6 months.
The next 6 months, yeah.
So, you know, what do you think's going to happen? I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball.
Well, right now, you see it already.
Yeah.
Corporations now are telling you can't work unless you get, you fall victim to their mandatory experimental biologic. That's building resentment. That's building a lot of anger. And those same people that wasn't with us are joining us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our numbers are growing. Now they're going to try to cut you off from traveling. Now they're going to try to cut you off from getting food because they're desperate. They're desperate, but that's only going to unify us more.
Yeah.
And the ones that are not with us, let them become the slaves that they are.
Thank you.
It's not our responsibility.
Yeah.
You're a slave. You embraced it. You have walked away from God. You've allowed them to rewrite the DNA of your faith. That's on you.
Right.
But the ones that God chose, like us, we have to do a better job of loving and connecting to each other.
Yeah.
We have to do a better job of helping each other. We have to do a better job of educating each other.
I think that's important because, you know, as I mentioned before, it's like, you know, around here, we're trying to do what we can, but it's a very difficult thing. And it's not always easy to understand the direction to take to do those things because we have so much systemic it has taken generations to bring the people who we live around in this very poor community down to the level that they are.
Can you do me a favor? Can you stop saying poor community? Can you stop using their language? Well, because the community, let me just tell you what I mean.
Okay.
Our communities are poor because of the same very system that they have a dream spell with. So when you say poor, right? The reason why we are poor, the reason why we are a bottom class is because we accepted the devil's deal, right? We cut the deal with the devil, which is the Democratic Party and the now radical left.
Right.
So the reason why we are poor is because we've accepted the theology of poverty and victimhood. So no, they have accepted it. Now, there are some people that are poor because of a lot of reasons, but there are a lot of us that live in your community, my community, that are not poor of consciousness.
Right.
And the reason why
I agree with that.
The reason why our community looks the way it does is because Black people like me, that look like me, right, for years have lied to these people, have lied to our children. Yeah, they are the most despicable people on the planet Earth. Not the barbarian at the gate, but the barbarian in the gate. So when you say the word poor, it buys into that narrative. Say that we are unconscious. Say that we have lost our way. Say that we're disconnected for something greater than ourselves. That group. Okay. Poverty.
That's what we mean.
Right. Poverty is something that we accept. And the reason why they're getting away with is because we have accepted victimhood.
Yeah.
And I'm not a victim.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think that's the case also, because this is a very mixed community that we live in. And, you know, the politicians, pretty much, I'd say, you know, 99% of them are white. currently, and have been, and they have been very corrupt individuals who have led people down the path, not of a path of racism, but a path of corruption. And at one time, you know, this area that we live in was pretty much run by the mafia, you know, and people here
might have been better off. I don't know.
well, that's what I'm about to say, is the people here are looking nostalgically back towards that, and I have a problem with that, because that also brings you into a sense of victimhood and you know, allowing yourself to be manipulated. Now, it's hard to beat that, but I think we're facing the same kind of thing today.
Right.
You know, we're experiencing a contemporary version and larger version of the mob.
Yeah. And what you said earlier about how they have adopted this, you know, this mindset, living in these kinds of communities, it's inherited. It's generational trauma bonding. It's, you know, believing that they can only go a certain. They've been told for generations that they don't have access to the meritocracy that you have, and they believe it. And so it's like the snake eating its own tail. It just keeps reinventing itself over and over
in
again.
the early 1800s, coming out of slavery, going into Reconstruction, right? This is very interesting. Black Americans weren't worried about that. They were worried about building community, building their own churches, building their own banks, building their own economic, economy
And
They look at
infrastructure,
themselves. They look at themselves as an emerging market because they had all the skills. Remember, the slaves had all the skills.
Right.
Right.
Of course.
Think about how that's been reversed.
Yes, it's upside down.
We had all the skills, and then they told us in order to be a value human being, we had to spend $250,000 to send our kids to school to get a law degree and a medical degree, which has no value today. PhDs, which has no value today.
Right.
Bachelor's degrees have no value because none of these kids can build an ant house.
Right.
So now on the other side, they have all the skills now. They run the industries now. They run everything now. You see how we were duped? So when I see all these new wave Black people, talking about, oh, well, we have to educate our children. Well, we've been educating our kids the wrong way because they don't even know. Look, Dr. Henry Clark, one of my other heroes, one of the greatest historians of our time, Dr. Henry Clark, did something one day in a lecture, because I used to go to all these lectures. Like, that was my church at one time, right? And Dr. Henry Clark, Dr. Scobie, Dr. Jeffries, Dr. Rashidi, all of these great, great historians, I used to go and listen to them every Sunday. It was a place called African Echoes. And they woke me up consciously to Black American history, African history, real African history. And they got me past the distortion of history that I knew, because I got a lot of the positive stuff in my house. I was trained to understand history and use it as a backdrop for what I needed to do as a human being. But let me just tell you this. He says, white Americans will bring a plane, right, to their kids in a box that they have to build. Black Americans will bring the plane already assembled.
Interesting.
Right. And this is Dr. Henry Clark. So now we're not teaching our kids to nation build. We're not teaching our kids to grow and build and own. We're teaching our kids to be slaves.
And be consumers.
So
which is another term for slavery. Yeah.
Right. So when you hear people say this, and this consumer thing drives me insane. Well, we're $1 trillion. We have the buying power of $1 trillion. Well, we don't want that. We want to be homeless.
No, we need to build it.
I call that slave talk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in all your Black major cities in America, they don't see those cities as emerging markets. They're not building effective human capital to participate in the global economy. They're not building scientists to understand what we're going through right now. The public school system is I call it the factory of death. Right?
You won't get an argument away. You won't get an argument from us on that.
I'm talking to the people that's listening, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the factory of death. So what do you gain by keeping your kids in a school system that's destroying them? What do you gain by financing a school system that's destroying? All you're doing is empowering the unions who have now been working hand in hand with the global tyrants to kill our children. The whole thing is to kill our children. The whole thing is to kill them so they won't populate the world with critical thinking human beings that will change our planet. Right? So think about it. So the unions now have just turned their backs on all of their workers, and you're still funding them. So that means you're mentally ill. You're a slave too. Why are you still funding them?
Right.
When you stop funding them, they go away.
Right.
When you say no, they go away. When you stand up, they go away. But see, we are so lazy that we believe something miraculous is going to happen, that it's just going to turn around without us struggling and fighting for it.
Right.
So all of these unions have now been captured. So why are you still listening to them? And all of these public teachers and all of these people that have gone and taken experimental biology because they think life is going to be better for them, shame on you, because it's not. And all of these people that use this excuse, well, the reason why I got it, Kevin, is because I wanted to travel. I said, when was the last time you traveled?
My God. Can you imagine being a product of a medical experiment or involved in a medical experiment simply because you want to travel? Like, what has happened to our society?
No, that's their rational. Think about it, Jude. They're rationalizing their mental illness. It's not logical. So when you get sick tomorrow, I'm gonna tell you a story I heard today. I'm in the car today, and my wife is talking to me. My lovely wife, Gail, is telling me, Kevin, something happened to a family that we know. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, you know, all of the family went and got the injection, and the mother died 3 weeks later. And the son went out the next day and got the booster and died the next day.
Oh my God.
Whoa. Now the father is distraught. I feel his pain. But think about the logic. Think about the disconnection here.
Mm-hmm.
The mother dies of the experimental biologic. Majority of the people that are dying, well, you know, that you don't, after 14 days, if you die within the 14 days, you didn't die of the injection. You died of COVID.
We've been hearing that. Yeah.
Right? Think about it. The son of the mother that just died, the son of the father that is destroyed, lost his lovely wife. And we got to pray for this family. The son was so contemptuous and so confused, he went out and got the booster and died 2 days later. That's happening all over the country. Mm-hmm. So you can't die of the injection, but you can die of a virus, right? That's man-made. I want to get into that. That's man-made. You can die of a virus that's man-made because they get paid for it. Your schools are getting paid for it. Your hospitals are getting paid for it. Mm-hmm. Your churches are getting paid for it. Your politicians are getting paid for it. So now, think about this. This young man saw his mother die. You talking about cognitive dissonance. Saw his mother die, and he went out and took the booster because he believed in the vaccine cult as opposed to believing what happened to his mother. Now something is wrong with us. And if you ask any of the people out there, well, if you don't agree with me, why are you censoring me? You can get rid of me in 1 second. Just debate me and prove that I'm lying. You ever notice? We didn't have any debate. That's why these things that we're doing, the medical apartheid meetings that we're having in the Black community is so important, because we're initiating this debate. Right. So now, here's the thing that we're missing. We have now found out without a shadow of a doubt that this is not a natural virus.
Right.
Well, we knew that.
This has been gained and functioned. This has been tinkered with. It has been put out into the world to create this new system that they want. And none of us are talking about the crime.
Right.
None of us. We are still talking about the science as opposed to talking about the crime.
Right.
We are still trying to convince ourselves that there's this monster virus out there and that our natural immunity can't take care of it and that we cannot build antibodies to fight against it. And the reason why we can't, because the crime is really committed. And we are all, something is wrong with us because we're not talking about the crime.
Exactly.
The murder of our moms and dads and our grandmothers and grandpops and our children and our kids. We are not talking about the crime.
No, we're not. And I'm speechless. I don't, there's very few people, even in the, what I like to call the podcast industrial complex, that are, that are not talking about the crime. There has been a crime committed.
Yeah,
And
a crime like we've never seen before.
ever. And I don't know what's wrong with the world that we're not out there calling for the for the heads of the criminals.
Well, you know why?
I mean,
Because everybody's catching up to us, Julie. Now, last year we called this out. We knew this happened last year. Now it's been proven. Why isn't Fauci in prison? Why aren't all of these elected officials that have been promoting this death in prison? Why isn't the representative of the World Health Organization and the CDC and the FDA and the OSHA and these corporate titans now that are forcing you to take an experimental biologic that they know is not going to stop transmission, that they know is going to kill our children, that they know is going to kill our elderly, that they know is going to depopulate the world because we're going to lose our ability to what? Procreate.
Yeah.
there you
Are
go.
you kidding me? All of these people are war criminals. And
Right.
you know why we're not talking about the crime? Because we are still trapped in a losing battle about science. Science will always be debated, but the people that are pushing out these new documents, they're all pharma driven. They're all being paid by big pharma. So why aren't they listening to Dr. Tenpenny? Why are they not listening to Judy Mikovits? Why are they not listening to Christiane Northrup? Why are they not listening to Carrie Madej? Why are they not listening to Dr. Hilly? Why are they not listening to us? Because we are prepared to defend our argument in the public square, and they cannot win.
Right. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
They cannot win.
No.
Look, they're censoring us, which is so un-American. And when you hear Black Americans and white Americans celebrate censorship, well, you know we got a problem. But I'm happy they're censoring me. You know why? Because every time they censor me, I pick up another 200,000 people that's listening. Every time they stop me from having a conversation, somebody's interested in what we're talking about.
It's true.
Every time they say something is wrong with us, people say, well, they're saying what they're telling it, they're showing us information and data. You're not showing, and this is their favorite word. We have to follow the science.
Right.
What science?
Right.
I'm following the science.
Have you
what
noticed?
Science?
You notice it's the science, right?
The
as if there's an R in a circle following that, right?
Right.
The science.
Now Fauci, that guy. I have to be careful because I will lose all consciousness about this guy. This guy is the equivalent of Hitler. This guy
Mengele, for sure.
This guy is the most evil human being that has walked this earth. And he has lied to us constantly, but that's not misinformation. Every day he lies, but that's not misinformation. Every journalist, fake journalist, every pastor, fake pastor, every institution that's taking money from the global tyrants and taking our money, our taxpayer monies, to use it against us. Every educator, every institutional leader that has taken their money, they are war criminals. We need to take all of their pictures and stamp war criminals.
This is something we've been talking about.
All of their union leaders, war criminals.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I have never seen such a feckless individual ever when I see Fauci. I mean, the man has, he does not have a soul, it feels like. I mean, I get a reading from him that he is without a soul and just completely feckless and smug. And he knows that what he's saying is a lie. I mean, we've been listening to Dr. David Martin talk about Fauci, and he says, you know, he knows for a fact that, you know, as Fauci was giving deposition to Congress, saying that no, he was not endorsed or, you know, allowing for gain of function research. He was signing the paperwork that very same day, like right after he said, no, I'm not doing that. You know,
so clearly,
here's the problem. The reason why he can get away with what he gets away with, because we are just as corrupt as he is.
Yeah, if we're not doing anything about it, I mean, I don't understand why each and every one of us don't link arms and go in and take over our municipal bodies that are supporting those guidelines from the CDC.
But that's getting ready to happen. Because the CDC is not a government agency. They're going to
I know.
Yeah. When I hear people say the CDC, I said the CDC has had it wrong about Black people since its inception.
Right.
And when people keep using Tuskegee, I bust out laughing. That's nothing compared to what has happened to Black people.
Exactly.
That's right now. That's happening right now in Kenya. That's happening in Nigeria. That's happening in Australia. All of these places.
Mm-hmm.
Did we forget about what happened to the Tasmanian people in Australia?
Nope.
Aboriginal people in Australia. Did we forget about what happened to Black Americans in this country? Did we forget about what happened to Jews in this country? Did we forget about what's happening to the indigenous Chinese people in their country?
Indigenous Americans. The indigenous people.
And guess what? But let me tell you what's so frightening. The indigenous community has embraced the death jab. It's like a love affair.
I know. I know. There's money involved.
Yeah,
there's
there you go.
Involved.
And if we follow the money, you can follow the pain. Mm-hmm. You can follow what they're doing. Our public schools should be shut down right now. We should stop paying taxes. Stop. There should be the elected official that stands with us should say on the floor, we need to pass a bill not to give and finance Big Pharma ever again. We need to change the vaccine law of 1986 and make sure these people are responsible. That's why our government has abandoned us. All of these elected officials that sound cute, smell cute, and think that they're not fighting for us.
No. My feeling is that the only real way to make affect any kind of real change in this is if the communities either break away from the municipal systems that are currently governing them, like the school board that's requiring the children to wear a mask all day and things like that. So like you said, pull your kids out of school, or the reverse of that, which is to walk into those municipal buildings, pull the individual who is representing you up by the scruff of their collar and say, you're done and I'm taking over. Because
the people, you are so right. The people form the government. We've become so weak.
Totally weak.
We are just weak.
I
tell people, I said, the reason why you're in the condition that you are, because you're weak, because you have accepted their narrative for your own life.
Right.
How do you do that? And how do you tell me you care about your children when you send them into these burning buildings every day? Right. And socially they're going to listen. I saw a family today. I'm just still fascinated by this. All of their kids had masks on them because this is the intelligent class.
Right. Yeah. I know. Right.
This is the liberal class. This is the liberal class. Listen, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X said something many, many decades ago. The liberal class in this country is our enemy.
Yeah.
Langston Hughes wrote an article about a poem about the liberal class.
Oh yeah.
Right? James Baldwin annihilated the liberal class.
Mm-hmm.
But we still are subscribing to their ideology to keep us in slavery.
Right.
The radical left is the equivalent of the Nazi Party in Germany.
That's what it's become.
It's become
we agree that
the Democratic Party
when we saw anarchists embracing this.
Yeah, and we were shaming working class for having to get on a bus and go to work,
right,
so that they could support their families. And supposedly, people who were anti-establishment and power to the people were shaming the working class and shaming people who were just continuing to live their lives,
right.
doing what they had to do.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the next 6 months, it's going to be something.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all going to be pretty. But I want to warn everybody at home. This is what's going to happen. And I hate to use these terms, false flags. I hate all of that stuff. I hate it. I hate using their language. But they're going to find a way to create chaos and suggest that the unvaccinated who's fighting for their true freedoms that God gave them are the problem. And they're going to create scenarios around the world and around the country that points to us like we're the problem when they're the problem. Don't fall for that. Don't fall for that. I want everybody at home to know, don't fall for that.
Right.
That's a lie.
That's something.
They did the same thing. They did the same thing doing 911 to the Arab community. They did the same thing. They have done this continuously. How stupid can we be? Don't fall for those false narratives. I'm not going to say, I hate the other term they use. Don't fall for that. No one that's unvaccinated is worrying about hurting anybody. What they're worrying about is protecting their inalienable rights that God gave them. That means freedom. God is freedom. Freedom is God.
Right.
So we're not here trying to create a scenario where people get hurt. But now, here's the other thing. The greatest thing we got going for us is the Second Amendment. I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment. I'm a big believer. Because if we didn't have the Second Amendment, we would be in trouble right now. So now they're trying to pass laws to take your guns away from you, right, to weaken you so you can't defend yourself. Now, our founding fathers, the founding fathers, they might not be my founding fathers.
No,
they're not mine.
They're not mine either. Yeah.
But they were deemed terrorists of their time.
Right.
And they had to get guns and ammunition from France and other parts of the world to defend themselves against the tyranny of their time.
You know what's so messed up is that in Pennsylvania, you not only do you have to register your gun, you have to register the bullets you buy. This is insane.
Well, the reason why it's happening is because we've allowed our government to do it.
Right. Yeah. Well, we moved here and we found all these things out, and we're just like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Why are the people of Pennsylvania such pussies? I'm sorry, but I'm just going to say that.
Well, they are because they're lazy. They're pussies.
Where the Constitution was penned. I mean, that's what's so like.
And in Pennsylvania, of all states, right?
Right.
But here's the deal: there's going to be a group of us, and whether we like it or not, I'm sorry to tell you, this country is going to be split in half. And, you want to call them red and blue, blue and green, orange, whatever. There's going to be a group of us that live in another part of the country that are going to do quite well. Yeah. And the people that are trapped here under the dream spell of the Democratic Party and party politics, right, are they going to live in dystopian hellholes?
Right.
And I'm sorry, it's going to happen.
Right.
You know why?
Complete subservience and control.
Dense.
Right.
Right. Some people are so dense. Some people are so disconnected consciously from God that they're going to buy anything because they're still listening to Shaquille O'Neal, what's that guy, the actor Jackson, whatever his name is, and all of these crazy new wave black people, Samuel Jackson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Mr. Bonnie Ghani, black Muslim. We had to fight for him to be free and worship and play basketball. And now he's telling other basketball players that believe in body sovereignty, oh, you should fire them. They should all be run out of town. They should all be ran out of town.
Wow.
You think about what I'm saying. You got black Americans, right, saying, oh, those people should lose their jobs because they don't want to turn their bodies back over to be slaves again. Who are these people? Who are these Philistines? Who are they?
Right.
Who are these new wave who are these new wave black slaves?
Right.
You got black people, black actors, the entertainment class. They're selling evil to our kids every day. We are responsible for the monsters our kids are going to turn into because we're not fighting for their lives.
Right. Absolutely. And we've been following the groups on Facebook that what is it? The mask. Can you talk about that?
Pennsylvanians against masking children. There's quite a few groups going on. They're not getting it though. They are wasting their time and energy trying to beg and plead with the very system that benefits from their oppression. Trying to get that system to right itself, and it's not. And I keep telling them, and I feel like getting on a pulpit and speaking this kind of truth that you're speaking, which is that the only thing that's going to save your kids is to pluck them from that system and get them out of there. But they don't.
I believe in the next couple of months, there's going to be an exodus of these schools. And it's happening. You don't feel it because you're just not out there. Oh, but they're taking their kids out of these schools.
Yeah, we don't have kids, so we hear it third hand.
But
right.
I have two grandsons, they have parents, but I'm the boss.
Right. Right.
Look, when grandpa speaks, everybody listens.
I'm sure.
Well, I imagine, and even more so when grandma speaks.
Right.
That's right. Oh, my well, that's a whole nother. She's much love. I adore her because she is so independently powerful on her own. And we were having a conversation today. She says, Kevin, I want you to be mindful of the people you come in contact with. Because she says, well, Kevin, people are asking me, are you afraid? I said, yeah, I've not been afraid one day.
Right.
Not one day have I been afraid. I said, I will hug everybody on the planet Earth
Wow.
as they come to me. I'm not afraid of any of it. I will not
Wow.
embrace that thinking. I will not worry about it. And guess what? Whatever's in store for me, at least when I leave this planet, at least when I leave that day, that somebody's going to say, he fought for us.
Right.
He
Wow.
fought not for Black Americans, but for all of us.
It's mind-boggling that it may have come to that, and I know what you're inferring. It's got to stop. Like, this thing has got to stop ruining people's lives and scaring people's families.
All those people that are gleefully going into restaurants with their slave passport, you're a slave, you're a bigot, you're a racist, and you believe in segregation. That's what you are.
That is
and
it.
You believe you're cleaner than I am as a human being. So you have bought in to the narrative that separation is okay. And guess what? Don't freaking be mad at me when we separate from you and you're trapped in this dystopian hellhole.
Right.
Because that's what's going to happen to you.
Right.
Yeah.
You have accepted it, you own it, and you need to live in it.
Right.
And you don't get to come around me talking about, like somebody called me today, let's go, the other day, let's go have lunch. I said, where? They said, well, this restaurant in New York. I said, I don't eat in restaurants in New York. They've lost 40 to 60% of their business, and they're going to lose more.
Yeah.
Anybody that goes into those restaurants, anybody that gets on a plane, anybody that goes shopping and have to show their slave passport, they are a bigot, they are racist, they believe in segregation, and guess what? Racism is their father.
Yeah.
They don't get a buy. They don't get to hide.
Right.
They don't get to hide. You don't get to, I just did it because I wanted to have dinner. Oh, I just did it because I mean, that is the most horrible thing to say to me.
Right.
But I don't want them to think that their hands are unclean. They're the ones that turned their backs and enslaved us and helped to enslave us. Those are the ones during, during the Nazi era that pointed out and say, oh, they have people hiding in their houses.
Good Germans.
Good Germans. And let me tell you something. They have to live with the horror that they have to live with that horror for the rest of their lives. And we should never forget it.
Right.
Right. We should never forget it. Always remember. Look at what's happening in Israel. They forgot.
Right. Right. Yeah. They forgot.
So they can never talk about anti-Semitism ever again. You can never talk about racism. Black Americans can't talk about racism when they hired the greatest segregationist of all time to be their president.
Right.
It's true. It's true.
It's true.
So don't come to me telling me about nothing.
Right.
And all of you people that are listening to this, guess what? I'm prepared to stand in my square about what I said. I'm prepared to stand in my square and stand on every word I said. So you don't get to talk about racism anymore. You got to see these people talking about what's happening in Texas. Oh, well, what they're doing in Texas about abortion is the tantamount of white supremacy. No, it was white supremacy that created abortion. It's eugenics. It was a corporation of white supremacy that came up with the idea that we need to depopulate the world of blacks. That's why Germans came here, the Nazis came here to learn at our feet.
Right.
What did you do to destroy the Black American? How did you do it? It was masterful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. So what are you talking about?
Right.
All of you that have embraced it, you're evil.
Right.
And I'm not here to make you feel good. I'm sorry. I love hope. I love all of you, but I'm taking action to protect humanity from you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, Kevin, I want to wrap this up, but before we do, I want you mentioned an individual when you were in Maine who is no longer with us. And who was that? Remind me.
Robert David Still.
Yeah. So you're going to talk about him briefly. And so I'd like to, have you talk about him and, before we say goodbye.
Yeah.
Well, Robert David Still was a man that loved this country. He was the man that raised over $1.6 million to take 6 buses across the country to talk to America about faith, family, and freedom. And when I first met him, I actually didn't think I was going to like him. But when I started reading his work, some of it I'd agree with, some of it I didn't, but I didn't disagree with it. It was opened me up to have a bigger conversation with him. But he broke this whole discussion open and wrote so much about pedophilia and what was happening to our children in this country. But when I met him, I didn't know if I was going to like him. And when I was the only one, we had a tour bus. I had this beautiful tour bus. He asked me to share the bus with him, and I was like, oh, God, I'm not in the mood with dealing with this kind of stuff. But now, I got to tell you, when I first met him, I was like, oh, God, I can't. I don't want to deal with this. I mean, I was like petrified.
Yeah.
So now I'm on the bus talking to this guy, and I fell in love with him because he had a heart of gold. He loved his country. He loved public service, and he gave his life for this country. And this medical system killed him. I want everybody to understand that this man opened me up and gave me the opportunity to travel all around this country to talk to Americans where they live, where they eat, where they love. You know, talk to them on their ranches, talk to them in their diners, talk to them at the coffee stops. Every day I was on the stage at 6 o'clock talking to America. And this man put all of that on his back. And he never trusted the health system. He gave us the ability to talk about medical freedom every day. Every day. He brought us all together. He brought the country together. He was traveling on the road by himself. Because the last time I saw him was at Hackettowns, New Jersey, because we wanted to do the last 15 cities, you know, flying in, because we knew the East Coast was kind of weird, so flying in was better. And he got on the road to go to Florida because we were supposed to meet each other in Florida, and he got sick. He always caught a bad case of pneumonia. He had those problems. He goes into the hospital to get the proper care, which he never trusted. This man never trusted the hospitals, but he was alone on the road. And he didn't know what to do. And all the doctors were trying to help him and get him the stuff that he needed. But for this one day, he checked himself into the hospital and they killed him.
Oh, my God.
They killed this man. It's painful for me to talk about it.
Oh,
but the hospitals now are the new gas chambers.
yes.
Yeah.
And what they did was, instead of helping him and giving him the proper vitamin C, vitamin D, ivermectin, and hydrochloroquine, and all of the stuff and the steroids that he needed, they kept that away from him, and they gave him remdesivir, and they intubated him when he was asleep. You know how they put you under?
Oh,
they
yeah.
Intubated him, and he was dead. He was dead. They murdered him, and it's been happening all around this country.
Yeah, it has.
Now let me tell you what they're doing. If you get a PCR test, right? Which does not, the creator said it does not work. the cycle threshold is high so they can get the false positives.
Right.
They will put you on a floor and they will then work on killing you because they make money off of your death.
Right.
Now the hospitals are co-conspirators in the murdering of Americans and people all around the world.
Yeah. They are.
And they murdered this man. You know why I know they murdered this man? Because I was trying to get him out of the hospital with some of the greatest doctors of our time, but he was so afraid because he was by himself. They told him that if he walked out of the hospital, he would die. And they systematically murdered him. They're murdering our parents. They're murdering our children. They're murdering our loved ones. And then when you go into the hospital, they trap you. They take you away from your family. They take you away from your loved ones. They take you away your ability to protect your loved ones, and they murder them for finance, for money. That's what they're doing in your public hospitals. And I'm telling you, everyone that's having a baby, everyone that is sick, everyone that has a possible pneumonia and flu, find another source. Because if you go in there, they're going to kill you. Now, here's the problem that I have with all of that. There is nobody on the planet Earth that will tell me, Kevin D. Jenkins, if my wife and children were in that hospital, that I can't see them. I would burn that hospital down.
Thank you.
I will annihilate those people.
Right. Right.
You will not take my baby away from me and inject it with death. You will not tell me to wear a mask. I'll have the baby in the middle of in front of your hospital.
Right.
We have surrendered our power to some of the most evilest people on the planet Earth.
Right.
They killed him, and they're killing all of us. Your hospitals now are co-conspirators in your death. So that means we have to create a new system. We have to create a new school. We have to create other places and other ways to have our children. Period.
Yep.
That's why we have so much chronic illness. That's why the majority of our women have so many comorbidity issues.
Right. Right.
So when you go to the hospital, they're coming for your body.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And now they're telling you, if you don't show your slave passport, they won't even. You know why they're doing it? Because it's our taxpayers' money that are funding them and their bottom line.
Right.
And where's the government that we finance and fund and vote for? They're not standing with us. They abandon us. Where are the faith leaders? I should call them the religious leaders because they're not faith leaders that are standing in front of those churches and saying, you will not take our freedoms away from us. Where are all these educators that say they care so much about our children that are selling death and misinforming our children about their bodies and their minds? And guess what? Deconstructing our children and destroying them. Where are all these people? Where are all these public unions that we financed for decades that have turned their backs on us? Are you kidding me? Come on, guys. Wake up. Wake up, America. Wake up, world. Because now this is our season. What's going to be the last monument left on us for us? Right? Is it going to be a monument of failure and fear, or a monument of victory that we saved humanity and protected our children? When I spoke in Keystone Park during 4th of July, I was looking at the monument that represents bad, good, and evil for so many people. I started thinking about monuments. The Martin Luther King monument, you know, the Vietnam monument, the monument of all of our heroes that have died to preserve liberty and preserve our republic. We're embarrassing them. We're spitting on them right now. We're not standing up the way they stood up for us. They fought for us. And look what we're doing to ourselves. Look what we've done. Look what we've done to this country. Look what we've done to ourselves. Look at this how culture corrupt we've become. I love all of you. Love women.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you. That's such a powerful statement, and it's a good place to end, I think. We want to thank you for joining us today, and I am sure that there are many leaders in our community that will get a hold of this and watch it and learn something.
We're going to put, when we put this out, we're going to share the crap out of it, and we want you to as well. And we'll,
listen, I'm going to share it. When you send it to me, I'm going to share it where I can. And I'm going to give it to, the other thing I want to just leave on this, because I'm probably one of the most censored people in the world. I love it. So now I'm connecting with the world, and they're sharing everything by proxy for me anyway.
That's great.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love all of you that's doing that. Thank you very much. I respect you for that.
We're going to go ahead and sign off, but stay in the green room. We're just going to say goodbye to our guests, and then we'll come right back with you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, whoop. The other way around. Okay, there we go.
We hope that you guys really enjoyed this conversation. With Kevin. I don't think we really have much more to say.
No, we don't. Other than, we need your help to keep up to allow us to keep doing these things and bringing guests like Kevin to you. Producing shows like these are not free for us. And so what we're looking for is contributions from you. This will be on rockfin.com, and it is on rockfin.com. If you go to rockfin.com/book of hours, you can leave a tip in the tip jar as you're watching this, Or you can become a member and you can see our premium content as well as the premium content of all the creators on rockfin.com. So go to rockfin.com/book of hours. You could also become a patron at patreon.com, and you can join for as little as $2 a month. And that helps us produce the kinds of programming and content that you like to watch. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and we will see you very soon.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Book of Hours are artists here to empower and embolden your response to the constant negative sound bites that attack your news and social media feeds. In order to continue making the video essays and art you've come to enjoy, we need your support. Make a one-time donation or become a patron. Thank you.